Hi, I'm Tom Romito. I'm going to give you a briefing about strategic planning. Let's imagine that we're in a situation where you're the executive director of an organization and you've invited me as a consultant to come in to talk to you about strategic planning because you're thinking about taking your organization through a strategic planning process. So we're sitting across your desk and I'm sitting here with my desktop briefing. It'll take about 10 minutes to familiarize you with what I do. So, welcome to strategic planning. What I want to do is suggest to you why it's important to you. And there are two main reasons. One is that it will help you and your organization to focus your efforts. You see, many organizations struggle trying to achieve their goals. And they struggle because they feel that their efforts are fragmented and unfocused. And they feel it's that way because typically they're stretched thin, they're losing members, people are losing interest, we have a lot of committees of one, and people are getting burned out. So this process is going to help you to highly focus your efforts to make the best result for the efforts that your board is willing to give. And secondly, it's going to result in a 3-year plan. A lot of organizations don't have a plan. But this plan will result in a plan that will enable you to gauge your efforts over a 3-year period and achieve the best results. So there are 3 questions that I'd like you to consider as we talk about strategic planning. And the first is, what is your goal? A lot of organizations, as I mentioned, have not clearly defined their goals, and as a result their efforts are splintered. But by clearly defining your goal, we can have you hone your efforts very tightly on what you're trying to accomplish. The second thing is what barriers stand in the way of you achieving that goal. This way, we can develop strategies to break down those barriers so that you can achieve your goal. And the third thing I'd like you to consider is how you manage your finances. Now, this is important because organizations that are trying to grow and improve themselves need to get the facts about their money on the table, so that everybody in the organization understands where the money's coming from, where it's going, how you're going to invest it. It's also important to other people like funders or stakeholders who want to know where your money is. We have to be able to talk about these facts openly. So there are a couple of strategic planning fundamentals that I'd like to familiarize you with. The first is that I guide you through a process. Now this process, as I will mention, can be very short or it can be more extensive. There are essentially 8 steps that I will take you through in the strategic planning process. The first is setting the goal that we mentioned. There is only one goal. Many organizations feel that they have myriad goals, but consider the world of martial arts. In the world of martial arts there are hundreds of styles, but they are all oriented to one goal, and that goal is the unification of body, mind, and spirit. So in the world of strategic planning, I like to say that any organization can only have one goal. Everything else is subordinate to that goal and is considered a strategy or an objective. So we'll talk about that. The next step in the process is going to be identifying barriers that help you that keep you from achieving that goal. Next, we're going to look at ways that you have in the past or are now trying to break down those barriers, strategies that have been working for you or that you've used in the past and haven't worked, and we'll talk about why. Next, we're going to conduct what's known as an information gathering step. This is where we're going to find out from your board members or perhaps from outside members, what I call stakeholders, what's important to them about your organization, your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities that are facing you, and lastly, the threats that are facing you. This information gathering process is going to inform what your potential strategies are. Next, we're going to do what's called an analysis of your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, typically called a SWOT analysis. And by conducting the SWOT analysis, we'll develop some potential strategies. based on these strategies, we'll also have some objectives to help achieve them. The last step is going to be developing an action plan. We're going to have 3 to 4 core strategies that have fallen out of this SWOT analysis. And subordinate to each strategy is going to be maybe 5 to 10 objectives. And from that, that layout is going to fall an action plan. The action plan is going to help you determine who's going to do what in the next 3 years. And there may be a fundraising step attached onto the strategic planning process if we find that that's necessary for you to determine how you're going to gain funding and invest it. So, I'd like to go on to fundamental 2, which is that you're going to focus on 3 top priorities. Many organizations have a myriad of what they call goals, or things that they want to do, but they can't possibly do them all. So we're going to winnow down all of your goals into maybe 3 priorities. This is what I call the low-hanging fruit, the things that are smart to do, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're realistic, and they're time-based, which means that you can realistically plan on achieving them in a certain period of time. And lastly, you're going to develop an action plan, which I discussed. I want to say that the action plan is vital because, as Peter Drucker, a management analyst in the last century, said, any plan is only a good intention until it evolves into action. And so that's why we want to have a plan that tells who's going to do what. So there are 2 levels of planning I want you to consider as you get into this process, and one is that there is a short, abbreviated planning session, typically 1 4-hour meeting. And we do this. You might want to do this because you don't have a lot of time, or your board can't take time from work or from life to get together for more than 4 hours. This is an intense session where everybody's going to be tired, including myself. But at the end of 4 hours, we're going to have an action plan. It's just that you may not be able to invest this much time at one go, in which case you might consider the intensive planning method, where we spend 3 to 9 months attending several meetings, perhaps 6 to 10 meetings, 1 meeting every 2 weeks for 2 hours. This enables the content of each meeting to build on the last one. And many organizations find this very helpful because it gives them time to reflect on what they have learned as the process goes on. Now, in deciding which level to choose, it has to do with how much time you and your board can invest. If you can take your time and are willing to spend quality time over half a year, this is the way to go. Your board has to be committed no matter which level you go at. Every member has to be on board. If they're not, it's not going to work because somebody is going to be an outlier and is not going to participate and contribute to the overall good. And lastly, we need to consider whether or not you want to bring in outside input, stakeholders, as I mentioned, who will inform your future strategies. So, with all that in mind, I ask you, are you ready to do strategic planning? At this point, typically you and your board will get together in a huddle, talk over what I presented, decide if you want to go to strategic planning, if you want to do it with me, and in what format, abbreviated or planning. And then I will look forward to hearing from you after that. So thanks for listening. I hope to hear from you.